A former beauty queen and Instagram model gunned down in broad daylight after posting her location on social media.
Localizada sin vida, desnuda y con heridas punzocortantes en el cuello en una de las habitaciones en la...
In 2018, a Mexican Instagram model went viral for humiliating a friend, forcing her to kneel and beg on camera. This pissed off a lot of Mexicans who felt her actions were unjust, and it certainly angered one of Mexico's most dangerous cartels because 6 years later, they came for vengeance, and what they did to her changed the course of her life forever. Here are some times IG models messed with the wrong cartels. This was the moment when Ecuadorian beauty queen Landy Baragago was assassinated hours after sharing her location on Instagram. Now, while it's unsettling just how easily she was tracked, the bigger question here is why anyone would have wanted her dead in the first place. At just 23 years old, Baraga had carved out a very glamorous life for herself. In 2022, she represented Los Rios province in the Miss Ecuador contest, securing 5th place and capturing public admiration. Her success on the pageant stage led to a blossoming career as a social media influencer, amassing over 1 million followers on TikTok and over 170,000 on Instagram. She also ran a successful home goods import business and also owned a sportswear line. On the surface, it did look like she was doing pretty good for herself while living almost every girl's dream life. Yet her story takes a dark turn when her name comes up in connection to a notorious Ecuadorian drug trafficker, Leandro Norero, infamously known as El Patron. Baraga's ties to El Patron were made public just months before her death. El Patron was a prominent Ecuadorian figure tied to organized crime, more specifically drug trafficking, until his death in 2022. Now, he built a reputation as a key player in Ecuador's criminal underworld, allegedly financing and leading groups like Los Chone Killers, Los Lobos, and Los Tiguerones. Bands linked to the Mexican Jalisco New Generation cartel. Presented himself as a successful businessman with ventures into auto mechanics, real estate, and other fronts, but authorities saw through the facade, accusing him of laundering money and orchestrating large-scale drug shipments from ports in the city of Guayaquil. Now, during this investigation that exposed a vast web of corruption between Ecuadorian politicians and drug cartels, it was alleged that Baraga had a secret, intimate relationship with El Patron. In conversations extracted from El Patron's phone, he confided in his accountant, Elive Angulo, expressing his fear that his wife would discover his affair with Baraga.
If my wife comes across anything about her, I'm screwed. Her name cannot come out of anywhere, otherwise my world will come crashing down.
Now, on surface level, that's not a big scandal. Certainly not big enough for anyone to want her dead. However, when those text messages got leaked, investigators began suspecting that Baraga's businesses may have been fronts for laundering El Patron's illicit earnings. Plus, El Patron mentioned how Baraga introduced him to big Ecuadorian politician Cesar Litardo, and Litardo is also alleged to be a big player in the country's drug trafficking business. So, considering Baraga never publicly addressed her rumored ties to El Patron, it is clear that she likely had deep insight into Ecuador's criminal underworld, and it wouldn't have been long before law enforcement probably called her in for questioning or even possibly charged her. So, it's not far-fetched to think that someone somewhere wanted to silence her before that could happen. The only problem is, they chose to do it the hard way. April 28th, 2024, Baraga was at a restaurant in Quevedo when she shared this octopus ceviche on her Instagram page. Moments later, security footage captures the chilling moment she was casually chatting with this guy and then noticed 2 masked figures sneaking past the door. Suddenly, one gunman rushes towards her, firing multiple shots and striking both her and the man she was speaking to. The second guy stood guard by the entrance before both would flee the scene, leaving Baraga lying motionless in a pool of her own blood. News of her death destroyed Ecuador, not just because of her status as a public figure, because the assassination was caught on camera and it's circulated across social networks and blogs everywhere. As of now, authorities are still investigating her murder, trying to untangle the complex web of secrets surrounding her and just how much she knew that must have made someone really want her dead.
La popular influencer de Puebla, Bielka Pulido, conocida como Lady Humilladora desde 2018, tras un incidente donde obligó a una mujer a disculparse de rodillas, fue víctima de un tiroteo junto a su novio.
On a morning in April 2024, Mexican TikToker Bielka Pulido and her boyfriend were shot and killed right outside the gym they regularly went to. This attack would happen at a Beats fitness center in Santa Cruz, Buena Vista. But the crazy part is that Pulido may have been targeted because of something that happened way back in 2018. So here's some backstory. Pulido was a medical student who had a big following on Instagram due to her amazing physique. Before that, she went viral as a teenager when a video of her surfaced online. In this clip, she would force another girl to get on her knees and apologize in front of a crowd to settle a conflict. Now, the video was pretty humiliating, and because of it, the internet would dub her Lady Humilladora, which basically means Lady Humiliation. She gets a ton of hate for this, and because she was a teenager at the time, her mom had to hold a press conference to apologize and explain the situation. This video spread like wildfire across Mexico, and given how the internet works, there's a good chance it ended up in the wrong hands, maybe even with cartel members. Now, here's the thing about cartels. They like to act like they follow some kind of moral code, but in reality, they kind of make this shit up as they go. They'll tear apart communities, sell drugs, and kill innocents without a second thought. But the moment someone disrespects them, steals from them, or even slightly offends the wrong person, well, now, all of a sudden, we care about justice. Sure, Pulido made a mistake, but her mom publicly apologized, and most people eventually moved on. But the cartel? Nah, they don't forget, and they definitely don't forgive. It doesn't matter if you're famous or just some random. If you cross that certain line, you become a target. So after this viral video, Pulido disappeared from social media for a while, but over the years, she would make a comeback. She starts posting again, sharing bits of her life, and even running online businesses, selling perfumes and beauty products. She goes by the name La Bendy online, building a decent following on Instagram with 29,000 followers, but that wasn't enough to save her from what was coming. On April 3rd, 2024, Pulido's white Beamer is parked when a gray Hyundai pulls up beside it. Out of nowhere, a gunman opened fire. The sound of gunshots sent people running, and in total, 26 bullets would be fired, with her boyfriend, 41-year-old Joel Abraham Chavez, taking the worst of it. But Pulido was hit all over her body. Even after she was gone, people in Mexico were still talking about that viral video from years ago. Some comments were just outright cruel, with people saying things like,
"We're all equal and all end up in the cemetery or an incinerator."
This led many to believe that she was taken out by sicarios, or even local gangs, because of that 2018 video. But Mexican authorities aren't convinced with that narrative. Right now, investigators believe that the real target wasn't Pulido at all, but her boyfriend, Chavez. According to Puebla's Attorney General's office, Chavez may have been involved in some shady business, and that attack was likely a revenge hit. So right now, we can't say for certain who the real target was. As for the gunman, he vanished, and even though the shooting was caught on camera, the footage was way too blurry to make out the car's license plate, so it looks like there's no arrests. No shooter was ever identified, and just like that, Fielka Pulido and her boyfriend became yet another case of unsolved murders in Mexico.
Ella fue localizada sin vida, desnuda y con heridas punzocortantes en el cuello en una de las habitaciones en la segunda planta de una propiedad ubicada en la calle Factores Mutuos entre Distrito B4 y Distrito B6.
October 3rd, 2024, 36-year-old Cindy Elizabeth Hernandez Perez, known online as Ana Fabola or La Baragago, failed to pick up her son from daycare. Now her family's concerned, wondering where she is. Begins as a family search for a loved one quickly turns into a grim revelation. Cindy had been brutally murdered inside her home on Factores Mutuos Street in the Leones neighborhood of Nuevo Leon. Now, Cindy, a spirited and ambitious woman, was adored for her vibrant personality. Online, she captivated more than 13,000 followers on Instagram under her name Ana Fabola, sharing glimpses of her love for regional Mexican music, family vacations, and unwavering support for the Tigres of the Autonomous University of Nuevo Leon. Then on X, formerly Twitter, she shared adult content with her 120,000 plus fans. All in all, her posts would show a woman living her best life and celebrating really joyful moments, including her son's recent birthday, which had taken place less than 3 weeks before her death. However, this seemingly glamorous life was the complete opposite of how she died. Initial investigations revealed signs of violence around her neck, stab wounds, and bruises across her body, but most disturbingly would be a pillow covering her face, making the assumption that there might have been some type of struggle minutes before she passed away. Now, some reports also surfaced about a man believed to be Cindy's boyfriend who frequently visited her apartment in either a black car or a white van. Others say her rumored work as an escort and an adult film star may have factored into her death. But around November 2024, Mexican authorities make a huge breakthrough in this case. They identified a man named Francisco who allegedly contacted Cindy through an escort website just days before. Security footage footage would capture him entering her apartment building on October 4th, the day she was killed. Francisco is said to have ties to a local cartel in Mexico, and from his version of what happened, he actually tried to rob her, and when she struggled, he fatally stabbed her. In the escape, he would steal her vehicle as well, which was later found abandoned on the streets of Colonia 10 de Marzo in Monterrey, just a few blocks away. Police believe Francisco's attack was premeditated, potentially fueled by a complex mix of betrayal, violence, and power dynamics. Maybe her boyfriend or lover was a rival of his organization, who the hell knows? But as this investigation continues, Cindy's family and followers are demanding justice for a woman caught between the allure of her online persona and the darkness that ultimately claimed her life. If dangerously beautiful was a person, it's gotta be Guadalupe Lopez, an Instagram model by day and a high-ranking cartel drug lord by night. Now, these two photos show both sides of her life and the consequences of working with one of Mexico's most notorious cartels, the CJNG. But we gotta go way back to the beginning, when Maria Guadalupe Lopez Esquivel, also known as La Catrina, began her life as this humble rancher and a housewife, Alcatepec, Mexico. Maria knew early on she wasn't destined for a conventional lifestyle. She didn't like school and wanted something beyond her small-town existence, so she ran away from home in 2017. And that same year, she started living with a member of the CJNG in the remote Michoacan municipality of Aguililla. Now, it's during this period that she falls in love with another cartel leader, Miguel LM2 Fernandez, and decides to join the organization, not just for love, but for the power, fame, and money it promised. Once inside, Maria quickly rose through those ranks, cultivating an image as both a high-ranking assassin and an Instagram model who flaunted her good looks and weapons on social media. 2019, La Catrina was handed her first big assignment for the CJNG, and she would plan and lead an ambush on Mexican law enforcement that would leave 14 police officers dead. Less than a month later, she helped coordinate another attack that claimed the lives of 40 more officers. By the age of just 21, she had built a reputation as one of the most feared and wanted female assassins in the CJNG, with her own death squad at her command. Damn, her power was undeniable, proving that in this world, age truly is just a number. However, her growing notoriety would come with some serious consequences. On January 10th, 2020, Mexican State Police receive a tip about her location. Acting quickly, they surrounded her safe house. During a shootout, they left La Catrina trapped with no way out. She was shot right in the neck as the Mexican Army, National Guard, and Michoacan State Police raided the house, and soon after, footage of the incident surfaced, showing her gasping for air and covered in blood, while a cop is trying to reassure her that help was on the way.
Tranquila, mija, ya viene el helicóptero por ti. Ya viene el helicóptero. Tranquila, hija, tranquila. Vas a estar bien. Trata de aguantar,
Despite efforts to save her as they transported her in a chopper, La Catrina's injuries would be too severe. She lost too much blood and was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. During that same raid, authorities seized 10 firearms, ammunition, and several vehicles. They would also discover records showing that La Catrina managed a group of halcones, or cartel spies, that were paid around $210 a week to pass information to the CJNG, so it's clear that she had access to critical details about the cartel, and if she had been captured alive, she could have exposed valuable intel about El Mencho and the CJNG's operations. But her death just tells us that blending social media fame with cartel business is a sure recipe for disaster. This is Claudia Ochoa Felix, or should I say El Chapo's Kim Kardashian of organized crime. Claudia first became well known in 2013 when she started posting pictures online that showed off her luxurious lifestyle. She would pose with fancy sports cars, private jets, expensive outfits, and even brightly colored customized weapons. Her bold posts earned her the nickname the Kim Kardashian of the Sinaloa cartel because of her glamorous look and lifestyle. She had thousands of followers on Facebook and Instagram, and while some people admired her, others saw her as a symbol of how powerful and dangerous the world of drug trafficking can be. Now, there were rumors that Claudia had taken over as the leader of Los Antrax, a group of sicarios working for the Sinaloa cartel, after the arrest of her boyfriend, Jose Rodrigo Arechega Gamboa, better known as El Chino Antrax. However, in 2014, Claudia held a press conference to deny these claims. She insisted that she wasn't part of any criminal activities, and social media accounts linking her to the cartel were fake. But these weren't aren't the only rumors about her making rounds on social media. You see, some people thought that Claudia had lived a rich and fancy life in Buenos Aires, Argentina, with bodyguards and her own private plane. We had stories about Canadian rapper Drake even liking her, with fans saying that they followed each other on social media and sent private messages. However, no one could ever prove these rumors, but in the last hours of her life, it seemed like maybe not all those rumors were completely made up. In her final days, Claudia posted a seemingly carefree video to Instagram, laughing over drinks at a restaurant, the picture of somebody just enjoying life. She even gave a public nod to Alejandrina Guzman, the alleged daughter of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, thanking her for a branded Chapo 701 sweatshirt. But what happened next was anything but ordinary. September 13th, 2019, the night before her death, Claudia is at this nightclub, accompanied by this man whose identity remains unclear. Now, they left together and headed back to a private residence. By morning, everything had changed. The man discovered Claudia unconscious. Just like that, party was over. When paramedics arrived, they confirmed that she had died from choking due to alcohol and drugs. Now, the police said there was no signs of violence, but many people are wondering if someone had hurt her because of her alleged past connections, or even bringing up the daughter of El Chapo, which only a few people knew until that moment. And in this shocking twist, just a few months after Claudia's death, her supposed ex-boyfriend El Chino Anthrax was killed in Culiacan after escaping house arrest in the United States. This event led to even more questions about whether Claudia's death had truly been accidental, or if there's something somebody's not telling us.
Tonight, more bloodshed in Mexico. Another journalist killed this week in the country.
The witnesses stood there and watched in horror as she was dragged into a car.
September 24th, 2011, Marisol Macias Castañeda, also known as La Nena de Laredo online, was brutally murdered for exposing some criminal groups in Mexico through her social media accounts. Now, this could have easily been avoided, if not for the fact that Marisol typically lived in one of the most dangerous cities around the world, Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas. We could go on this long rant talking about how dangerous Tamaulipas has become and how locals live in daily fear, but it's not going to be too relevant here because Castañeda never had any physical confrontations with these guys, and neither was she your regular Instagram model. Being just 39 years old, she'd worked for the El Mañana newspaper, which had already faced violent attacks back in 2004 and 2006, and at the time of her death, she was the editor-in-chief of Primera Hora, a newspaper in Nuevo Laredo. Although her official role was administrative, she actively reported on drug trafficking through social media platforms like Twitter and Nuevo Laredo en Vivo, using the pseudonym La Nena de Laredo, or the Girl from Laredo. If you're just as curious as we are, you're probably asking, if she had an administrative role at the newspaper, why would she want to be a first-hand reporter, knowing how dangerous it can be? And well, the answer to that question resides in the fact that many residents in Mexican border cities rely on anonymous social media accounts to share information about cartel violence. These online platforms, like chat rooms, blogs, and networks such as Twitter and Facebook, are often only a way for people to stay informed about which areas to avoid due to ongoing shootings or attacks. Traditional media outlets like the one she worked for are frequently silenced by threats, kidnappings, and killings, making anonymous online reporting one of the few remaining avenues for the truth. And let's be real, she wasn't using her real identity on social media, so she probably thought there'd be no harm in it. But when you're dealing with cartels, nothing and no one is out of their reach. And so, by targeting the criminal groups in her area, specifically the Los Zetas cartel of all people, that violent group operating in northern Mexico and across the border in Laredo, Texas, this woman attracted dangerous attention. Now, it's still unclear how the Zetas managed to uncover her identity, maybe through some kind of Instagram, Twitter, Facebook connection, who knows. But the consequences were pretty brutal. Castañeda was decapitated, and her head was left on the top of the Christopher Columbus Monument in a busy, well-known part of the city. Her body, keyboard, cables, discs, and a handwritten note from the Zetas were left nearby. The note read,
Okay, Nuevo Laredo en Vivo and social media sites. I am Nena de Laredo, and I am here because of my online reports and yours. For those who don't believe this happened to me because of my actions, for trusting in the Army and Marines. Thank you for your attention. La Nena de Laredo.
That Z is the chilling signature of the Zetas, which is them basically claiming responsibility for her death. And if it wasn't disturbing enough for you, just 12 days before Castañeda was murdered, two young social media influencers, a man and a woman in their 20s, were found hanging under a bridge, their bodies with a similar note from the Zetas. They too had used that same website to share information about cartel activities, so it's safe to say the cartel was systematically targeting anyone who dared to use social media to expose their operations, and it looked like Castañeda tragically became another symbol in their campaign for terror. Now, if you're thinking posting pics with a gun wouldn't do any harm, well, think again. A Mexican Instagram influencer once posted a photo of herself posing with a gun and got killed by cartel sicarios. Now, the person in question here would be Instagram model with the handle Khani Buu. She had more than 50,000 followers on the gram and 136,000 on Facebook. But outside of that glamorous and luxurious life that she would flaunt on social media, Khani said to have some ties to narcotics. Now, some reports claim that she was a member of a drug cartel, La Tepito, and tragically, these are the same people said to have killed her. Why, you ask? Well, the only logical reason is that Khani was bringing too much heat on herself. On one Instagram profile, she would pose with a gun pointing right at the camera. In this other photo, she's taking a shot of an assault rifle with bullets spelling out her name. So it's possible she could have been attracting a little attention here, and Mexican authorities may have been planning to use her to track down some of her cartel associates. Who knows? After all, high-ranking cartel members never show their faces, because the moment they do, it's game over, just like what happened to El Chino Anthrax from the Sinaloa cartel's Anthrax squad. Now, he made the mistake of flaunting his wealth and cartel connections on social media, posting photos of his private jets, luxury cars, and exotic vacations, which led the authorities straight to his whole business. So maybe that's why Khani was taken out by her people. Maybe they started seeing her as a liability. But either way, July 17th, 2019, she was gunned down inside a bar in Nezahualcóyotl, a municipality near Mexico City. Yet to this day, there have been no arrests, no suspects, and no further investigations into her murder. Just silent. On the morning of December 4th, 2024, Fedra Gakiola, a well-known Mexican fitness influencer and entrepreneur, was shot and killed in broad daylight outside the hardcore gym in Tijuana. It was 8:30 a.m., and she just got into her Mercedes-Benz when a man walks up, fires some shots, and takes off in this PT Cruiser. Paramedics rush her to the hospital, but it's too late. She doesn't make it. Now, why was she a target in the first place? Context here, Fedra had built a strong online presence with 217,000 Insta followers and a big audience on TikTok. People knew her for her fitness tips, fashion posts, and lifestyle content. She also co-founded Floor Clothing alongside fellow influencer model Leyon. In fact, her final Instagram post showed her doing what she loved, modeling outfits from her store while sitting in the very car where she would take her last breath. But here's where it gets even more chilling. This wasn't the first time violence had come for her. Fedra was from Sinaloa, a place where cartel influence is just a part of everyday life. Back in 2011, she survived a shooting while sitting in a Beamer in the Hipodromo neighborhood. Then in 2018, tragedy struck again when her partner was murdered right in front of her and her young son in Colonia Agua Caliente. Now that case somehow went unsolved, and Mexican authorities barely spoke about it. If you're thinking this is intense, give me a second, because what happens a few months before her murder makes this whole story even more suspicious. In August 2024, Fedra did something bold. She goes on Insta Live and publicly accuses her then-boyfriend, Héctor Villegas Barquero, a former director of the Tijuana Municipal Police, of domestic violence. And then she uploads a video of him, shirtless and pacing around their apartment, allegedly calling the police for help. And then she says something that makes us think a bit.
Aren't you going to tell the police that you hit me too?
Yeah, that post didn't stay up for too long. She deleted it. And just like that, the official complaint she filed against him also disappeared. So what do we learn here? In a place like Tijuana, you don't just call out a former police chief, especially one rumored to have cartel ties, and expect to walk away like any other day. Héctor wasn't just a cop here. For years, people whispered his name about connections to the powerful underworld. And if those rumors were true, Fedra's public accusation didn't just embarrass him, put her in real danger. And let's be honest, men like this don't take public humiliation lightly. So maybe he didn't pull the trigger himself, but in a city where people disappear for much less, all it takes is a word to the right people. And then, just months after exposing him, she's executed in what looks like a well-planned attack. The shooter knew exactly where she'd be, what car she drove, and the perfect time to strike. You gotta admit, this wasn't random, but calculated. And the motive, well, kinda seems almost too obvious. Officially, there's no direct evidence linking her murder to her ex or to the cartel. But again, let's be real. Tijuana isn't exactly known for delivering great justice in cases like this. Now, right now, we have no suspects, no arrests, no real investigation, just somebody silenced in a place where power and corruption rule the streets. Now, when you're thinking of an Instagram model, your first thought might be a woman, right? Not always the case though, because here, we got a guy, a big social media influencer, who gets caught up in something far bigger than him, leading him to pay the ultimate price. It's 7:40 a.m. on January 23rd, 2025, when Mexican police get a distress call about a body lying on Boulevard Rotarismo in the city of Culiacan. And when they get there, confirm that it's 42-year-old TikToker and fitness influencer, Dal Peña. But why Peña? Why would someone want him dead? He wasn't involved with the wrong people. No ties to any cartel. Who would want to kill him? Well, it may come as a surprise, but the only crime Peña committed was living in one of the most dangerous places in Mexico, Culiacan, Sinaloa. And more times than not, that's enough to make you a target. Culiacan is the heart of the Sinaloa cartel, a city living under the shadow of drug lords for decades. But ever since El Chapo and Mayo got taken down, things have gotten really bad. The once mighty cartel fractured into rival factions, like they always do. On one side, you got Chapo's sons, Los Chapitos. On the other, Mayo's boys, Los Mayitos. The city became a war zone. You got masked guys roaming the streets like they own them. And honestly, in a way, they do. Federal troops may be stationed all over, but when it comes down to who's really in control, you know the cartel's calling the shots. This is why people in Culiacan live in constant fear. Businesses shut down pretty early. Schools close without warning. And when that sun goes down, the streets empty. Not because people are paranoid, but because they know better. Shootouts can happen anywhere at any time. You got guys on bikes and scooters patrolling the city, keeping watch, ready to sound that alarm if a rival group or the military gets too close. There's no way to tell who's who, and no one wants to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But somehow, in the middle of all this chaos, Adal Peña was just trying to live his life. From what we know, he wasn't a criminal, nor a cartel member. This guy was a fitness coach, actually a man who had fought his way out of an addiction and had turned his life around, to be honest. On TikTok, he had nearly 170,000 followers and over 21,000 on the gram, where he would share his workout tips, diet advice, and motivational speeches. He had a past, sure, but his present was about helping others build a better future. And yet, on the morning of his death, all of that didn't matter. He'd gone out for his usual run near Plaza Vancouver in the Tres Rios neighborhood. It should have been just another workout, but out of nowhere, an armed group ambushed him, unleashing a hail of gunfire, and sadly, he never stood a chance. Then came the rumors. Now, some said that he was related to Jesus Peña Gonzalez, aka L20, a high-ranking member of Los Antrax. Others would speculate that his past struggles with addiction had put him in contact with dangerous people, but we have no real proof, just whispers and theories, the kind of stuff that spreads around when someone dies in a place like this. But here's the truth. Dal Peña wasn't part of that world. He wasn't in their wars. He had already fought his own demons and won. He shouldn't have died like this. But in Culiacan, hey, that doesn't matter. In May 2021, day after 29-year-old Venezuelan model Anais del Carmen Gamboa visited her husband in a Guatemalan prison, her life takes a brutal and tragic turn. She's in her car driving through Zone 6 in the city of Quetzaltenango when two gunmen on motorcycles cut her off and opened fire, hitting her 4 times. Witnesses reported hearing her cry out for help before she died in this bullet-riddled vehicle. Now, Anais's murder wasn't a result of her own ties to drug cartels or gangs in Guatemala. It'd be a deadly consequence of the treacherous world her husband, Carlos Leyon, was entangled in. Now, Carlos isn't just any inmate here. This guy was the heir to the Leyon clan, a once powerful criminal family in Guatemala. His father, Juan Jose Juancho Leyon, was a notorious car thief turned drug trafficker, and he would build a reputation for stealing other smugglers' shipments, a move called Tumbes that earned him plenty of enemies. 2008, the Zetas cartel from Mexico decided they'd had enough and gunned down Juancho in a shootout that left 11 people dead. And from there, the family's grip on power crumbled further in 2011 when Juancho's brother, Haroldo, was also killed. His death allegedly triggered one of Guatemala's most violent massacres since the end of its civil war. 29 people were decapitated in this revenge attack carried out by 200 gunmen who arrived in buses. Oh, it was catastrophic to say the least, yet Carlos tried to keep the family legacy alive. But his luck ran out in 2015 when he was arrested for killing 3 people during a failed attempt to take over a farm. 2017, he was convicted and locked up in Cartel, prison bursting at over 300% capacity. And with guards overwhelmed, prison admins on the take, and rival gangs running wild, it's hard to tell who's really in charge in here. So when the news reaches him that his wife had been murdered, Carlos didn't just mourn, he unleashed a storm, starting off a riot inside the prison that left 7 inmates dead, 6 of them And to add to that chaos, the prison's deputy director was also held hostage for hours. According to Luis Escobar, the national director of the penitentiary system in Guatemala, Carlos Leyon had been extorted by gang members who threatened to kill his wife if he didn't pay up. And being the bad guy he was, Carlos refused to pay him a dime. So when the gangs followed through on their threats, Carlos showed that his influence wasn't completely buried behind bars. Now, after Carlos does what he does, and the locals in this place flood the streets to protest Gamboa's tragic murder, authorities scramble to regain control by transferring 77 alleged extortionists to other prisons. Yet, Carlos remained right where he was, clearly showing just how much power and influence he held behind those walls. But no matter how many more lives he claims, or how many protests go on, Gamboa will forever be remembered as a victim caught in a war she knew absolutely nothing about. Pretty tragic.